Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. This is Guy Christian with Goal 16. Today, we have the pleasure to have a guest, a special guest from the Philippines. Very far, yes. It's actually very late there, but she accepted to have a conversation with us. And her name is Kim. Miss Kim Jacinto Henares. Uh, Kim is from the Philippines, as I said earlier. She is an international consultant providing tax, legal, and management consulting for various entities, domestic and international. She is also a member of the United States UNESCAP. I'm not sure what it is, but I will ask her to define it. Eminent Expert Group on tax policy and public expenditure management and the UN Committee of Experts on International Cooperation in Tax Matters. Until recently, she served as the commissioner of the Philippine Bureau of Internal Revenue. She was the boss of the equivalent of the IRS that we have here in the Philippines. She has represented our country at various international conferences, and she's an active participant in the OECD Global Forum Transparency and Exchange of Information and the OECD Global Forum-based Erosion and Profit Shifting. So please join me to welcome our guest, Kim. Kim, so how are you?
I'm fine.
Good. So let's dive into our subject today. I'm surprised, from our perspective as a practitioner, tax practitioner, a civil society activist. We're always reluctant to, when we look at the OECD, and we look at the OECD as the enemy, especially coming from a developing country. So my question to you is, why are you working with them?
First, I was working with them as a representative of the Philippine government, not as a practitioner. Okay.
Right.
So my involvement in OECD was because the Philippines was put on a gray list.
Right.
Under the Global Forum for Exchange of Information.
Right.
So the Philippines cannot afford to be placed on a gray list because we have a lot of overseas Filipino workers who remit a lot of money to the Philippines.
Right.
So if we were placing the gray list, it will be very difficult for them and it will be very expensive for them. So because of that, we have to work with OECD because unfortunately, although they represent the rich country, they impose their will on everyone.
Right.
So you have to, whether we like it or not,
yes,
because of the strength and the power they wield, you have to work with them. So that's why we have to work with OECD.
Right.
Then why did I work with them with BEPS,
right.
Base Erosion and Profit Shifting? First, because if you look at the BEPS, Base Erosion Profit Shifting, is really a problem that the developing country has been complaining since long ago. But the developed country has been deaf, mute, and blind to those problems because it never really hit them.
Right.
Till the very constituent that they were developing and protecting, the multinationals, became so big and so greedy. Hold on. So big and so greedy that they have to come up with this base erosion and profit shifting because now they're eroding their tax revenue.
Right. I see. So let me ask you this: could you comment on of course the international the independent commission for the independent commission for the reform of international corporate taxation, as defined on its website, it's an independent organization, right? Am I correct?
Cut it off.
That has nothing to do with the UN. That has nothing to do with the OECD itself, because as I understand it, it does give its own opinion, which is generally contrary to what the OECD does, right?
Okay, it's an independent commission that has
Right.
their own position.
Yeah.
This is a counter argument against the proposal that has been. I mean, let's accept that there's a problem of base erosion and profit shifting.
Yes.
Okay. That a lot of tax revenue does not really benefit the country that needs it, which are the developing country. And the ICRIP is basically bringing out proposals that countered, or a counter proposal to whatever, if we think that what the proposal that is tabled in whatever a organization is not the right one in our opinion, then we give our own position.
Okay. Excuse me. So let's talk about the most recent report of ICRIP, the one talking about the global pandemic and sustainable economic recovery and international taxation. Could you comment a little bit about what this report was all about, please?
Well, I guess with the pandemic, right, then there are expenditures, right, and there's economic displacement, basically, and a lot of businesses basically had to stop or have to temporarily suspend themselves. And the argument now is, some of them argues that government should support them, right, and deduct and lower tax rate, or give them subsidy or grant or whatever, right? So basically, the position of ICRIT is that it is imperative now that you collect a lot of revenue, because your country needs it to deal with the pandemic. Therefore, it is not right to lower the tax rate at this point in time. Because if you lower the tax rate, everyone will try to lower their tax rate, and the poorest country, because they want to attract investment, it will be useless, right? They won't have the revenue. So basically, and also because if you're losing money, what's the use of a lower tax rate? Anyway, you have a loss. So you're not paying any taxes, right? So what's the benefit of a low tax rate?
Right.
So basically, that's where we're coming from.
Okay. Perfect. But before that, you guys, ICRIT came out with another response, but this was with respect to the OECD consultation on the review of country-by-country reporting on BEPS Action 13. Could you give some comment with respect to that response?
Yeah, because if you look at the way the OECD Global Forum BEPS dealt with country-by-country reporting, it plays a very high threshold. It's around 750 million euros, right? So for multinational to be covered, they have to be very, 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 very big, right? And if you're a small country, the turnover of that, they're multinational, their turnover in their country is small. So they would not be required to participate, as far as your country is concerned, in that country-by-country reporting. Right? So if we look at why we're doing this country-by-country reporting, is because, isn't it, we're supposed to be helping especially the developing country to be able to collect the tax revenue that is due them, that they are not able to collect from this multinational. So basically, it's not serving its purpose. So that's our position, that you should lower it, and basically that there should be more transparency. I think I think the world has proven, right, with all the lifting of the bank secrecy law, this is one of the most transparency is the most effective way in making people honest. Right? So that's basically the position.
The position for ICRIT about greater transparency of profit.
Yeah, and that the data should be available to as many people as possible.
Right, and then to make it available to everybody, right. Okay, that makes sense. Now, do you agree with me? I mean, I have a theory now in terms of tax avoidance that many tax practitioners and many tax experts don't necessarily agree with. To me, I'm among the people who are philosophically thinking that tax avoidance should not exist, and if it should exist, it should be called tax evasion, right? Which makes it illegal everywhere. Now, this is just my philosophical position. Now, I wanted to have your own perspective on this issue because I'm in total opposition of tax avoidance. I believe in deductions, depreciation, and credit that you can, give to companies, but I don't believe in tax avoidance at all. I don't know about you.
Okay. Remember, there's already a position taken by OECD and most countries with regard to transfer pricing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you do something just because you want to avoid tax, that's illegal.
Right.
That's for the transfer pricing. And I believe same principle as piercing the corporate veil, right? You can structure anything provided you do not do it because you want to avoid taxation. You want to, if you do it because you're trying to commit fraud,
Mm-hmm.
or you're doing it because you're trying to avoid labor laws, right? So those kind of actions should not be allowed. Now,
Right.
if you're structuring something because that's what makes sense in business,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not because the way you structure it, it's not because you want to avoid taxes
Mm-hmm.
or you want to avoid labor laws, right? Then that's a different story. But if you do something just because you want to lower your taxes, I think that is tantamount to tax evasion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Allow me to push back a little bit on that, because you see, I believe a lot of people like to say, well, it's just about structuring to give, a business sense of, diminishing the tax liability. And, you are diminishing the tax liability, but what about your corporate social responsibility as a corporation, within a society? You're making money, but you putting structure in place to avoid paying taxes that are helping other people build hospital, build schools, giving, sponsoring social programs for the poorest population in each country. You have been in a position of power, running internal revenue service in, the great country of the Philippines. So, I mean, I think it's just an excuse when people try to tell me that, it makes business sense. There's nothing that makes business sense that doesn't profit society. If what makes business sense profit only the shareholders, then, the definition of business structure or business profit, with respect to, when you apply it to what the society itself has to gain from, I think there is a problem there. I think one has to balance. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I guess this is the question, okay?
Right.
This came out in this, I don't know whether you're monitoring the Philippines, where the franchise of a media company was being heard.
Yes.
Right? And they were denied. And the question was, you're using donation as a tax shield. Right?
That's correct.
Okay. But for me, let's say in your country,
yes,
you want to help the poor, you want to help in the health sector, right?
yes,
Which one would you rather do? When you pay the government 1 peso, maybe 10 cents will get to what you want, will help the poor.
mm-hmm.
90 cents will not go to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you donate directly to build the hospital, donate directly to pay for the doctors to take care of the poor, your 1 peso or your $1 exactly goes $1 to doing the good that you want to,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
So, do you think that's wrong?
Well, I mean, well, again, I might agree, but I may also disagree because it all depends overall. Because now, if the corporation is investing the money directly into society and using it to get a deduction, right?
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with that. I mean, this is social. This is directly social responsibility. But if at the same time the same corporation is building structures to avoid paying taxes, and like as we've seen here in America, in many other countries in developing world, right, where you've heard probably the recent discussion with the island of Mauritius, where most companies that are operating in East Africa, right, are paying taxes. I'm not paying taxes in those countries where they are located, but they are paying taxes in Mauritius. And at what rate? At almost a minimum, very, very minimum. So if that's the case, then no, I disagree. I don't want a company to do that and to profit, because when you balance what they are getting and what they are avoiding to pay, I mean, I don't have the data in front of me, but I'm sure if one looks at it, you will discover that because they are not in the losing. Let me put it this way. If a corporation is paying taxes, they are not necessarily losing money. Society is gaining. Shareholders may not be making the same amount of money that they will like to make, but overall, society is better off, you know?
Yeah, but that's why the Global Forum-based erosion profit shifting was really created,
Yes.
right? Because to address that kind of an issue. Although that's a good goal, but unfortunately, what came out of OECD was did not really answer that.
Mhm,
Did not The solution they came up with did not really answer the problem of the developing country,
mhm.
but they tried to answer the problem of the developed country,
Country, yeah.
right? So that's where the discomfort is. So when Global Foreign BEPS was created, the problem they want to solve is really a problem universal, developing country. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, the solutions and the drilling down of the problem became problems of the developed country and solutions for developed country, and it did not really apply to what the developing country's problem is all about.
Right, right.
So that's the thing. So I mean, that's why we have to define tax avoidance, because
Mhm,
like the scenario I gave you,
mhm.
people will say it's tax avoidance. You're donating to lower your taxes. Right? That's also a tax avoidance, right?
Again, that's a deduction. I mean, you are doing, and this has to be done in, in in sort. I mean, you have to agree with the revenue service to allow you to do that and to see how much taxes you're trying to save versus you not paying. I mean, you know what these big corporation multinational are doing here. The OECD is totally incapable of helping these countries repatriate all the funds that are based in offshore accounts. I mean, these are trillions and trillions of dollars that are located because company don't pay taxes. Company don't simply pay. They are not paying taxes. You
Yeah,
know.
but remember, in your scenario, the problem is the double taxation treaty system had encouraged that kind of behavior.
Mhm.
So that is the problem. The way the double taxation treaty is written,
Mhm.
the way the double taxation treaty is implemented, gave all that loopholes, right?
Right.
So it's it's that system that's creating those kind of tax avoidance. No? So that's what we're all trying to solve.
Right.
Right?
Right, right. We're still trying to solve it, but you are in there. I mean, give me the state of mind of what your colleagues, you guys, when you sit down, what I mean, because you, from your perspective, is the perspective of most developing countries, right? So from that perspective, how do we solve it? Because we always have that uh, that that issue where Western countries are not thinking the same way developing countries are thinking, you know, when it comes down to resolving these issues. So give me your own perspective in that.
Well, I guess the first thing is we should stop talking and do something, right?
Right.
The developing country has been complaining, but they've not organized themselves
Okay.
and come up with their own solution,
Right.
right? So, so unfortunately, the developed country came out first and took the issue, right?
Mhm.
And impose. In a way, it's like this: there's a problem. If you feel that the solution will go against you, what you should do is you should take the problem and solve it yourself, so that your solution is not something that will go against you, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So I guess that's what the OECD did.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. So the problem is the developing country should have come out, organized themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and raise that problem and come up with their own solution. And
Yeah.
yeah, but unfortunately, the developing country did not do that, and let OECD
So
took
they
the
decide.
initiative. Yeah, took the initiative, right?
Mhm. Now,
And up to now, they have not organized themselves, the
right,
developing
right.
country.
So that lack of organization is actually what is hindering, to come up with a solution that is appropriate, against the OECD. Um, let's talk about these internet companies, Google, Facebook, and Amazon. What do you think developing countries should do in order to tax, to get some revenues out of these companies?
Out of the digital, the what?
No, with respect to Facebook, Google, and Amazon, this giant, this internet.
Yeah, these actually, if you look at their income, it's really the advertising income, right?
Right.
I was just thinking about this because of the pandemic. There's a lot of advertisers from the Philippines who used to advertise in the Philippine TV
Mm-hmm.
media has moved to Facebook, Instagram, and all those things.
Mm-hmm.
But there in the Philippines, the question there is you diverted your advertising in expense to those companies.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think you can deduct it as an expense in the Philippines
Right.
because you don't have an official Philippine issued receipt.
Okay.
So if you're not able to deduct it, the government actually is able to collect on it, right?
Very good.
But the one who's paying is not Facebook, Google, or whatever. The one who's paying is the advertiser, the one who bought advertising from them.
Okay.
So in that sense, the revenue is collected,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the one who's paying is not that Facebook, Google, but your own person. You're the people in your own country.
Right.
So because the problem with taxing Google, and so in that sense, the revenue that they generate, you have basically been able to collect from them, right?
Okay. Yeah.
because because these are usually business expenses. Nobody will advertise with them if you're just a consumer, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're a businessman. That's why you advertise. The other way to tax it is if you okay. The other way is you tax it in the sense that when they pay it out, you have to withhold taxes. Now they can deduct it as an expense.
Okay.
So I don't know whether you will collect more or you will collect less than the first scenario where you were not allowing them to deduct it as an expense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are practical considerations.
Consideration. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that sense, but that is the Philippine scenario because in the Philippines, you need to present a Philippine issued receipt. I don't know with other country whether there's such a requirement.
Yeah. But do you think we ever going to get a global solution to resolve this issue? Because, I mean, I take the position of defending developing countries because they are at the disadvantage, you know, in terms of expert, in terms of lobbying, or in terms of even having an equivalent of the OECD, you know, counterbalance the proposal of the OECD. Do you think that will ever happen? I mean, where, you know, a decision will be made and acceptable and fair to developing countries?
Okay. I think with the digital economy, everyone was waiting for OECD to come up with a decision, right? That's why people were holding off imposing their own taxes on
Right.
this, on Facebook, Google, and all these things. But last week or 2 weeks ago, US withdrew and said they're not going to be joining the the taxation of digital economy, right?
Right.
So it opened the door for every country, a free for all. So each and every country can do their own taxation already. They can impose the tax. But the question there is, okay, you impose the tax. How will you collect?
Collect it.
How will you collect it from Facebook? They're not in the Philippines. They're
Mm-hmm.
not in your country. Their asset in your country is so small. Their asset in your country is most probably just a business processing office, right?
Right. Right.
So that's a practical issue.
Yeah.
Imposing a tax is easy. You can write a law, but how will you collect from
You
them?
collect that revenue. Yeah. It makes sense.
Yeah, that's the thing that has to be looked at. Although we have there's although here again it's in the OECD, right? It's mutual
Mhm.
assistance in tax matter. If you sign that treaty, everyone who's in the treaty is supposed to be able to help the other in collecting taxes.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to have a decision in court here, right?
Right.
So now the other problem is, if can you file a case against Facebook, Google, and Amazon when they're not in the Philippines? How
Right.
can you serve them your pleadings? How can you serve your complaint? How can you, so if you cannot do that, the other country will say your lawsuit is not valid, right?
Right.
So
But
those are
do
practical
you think
issues.
do you think as a practical solution, do you think we should have an international court of taxation, for instance, under the UN, some convention like or we can give some authority, amend the treaty that creates the International Criminal Court and give it some powers with respect to implementing taxation violations internationally?
You have, but taxation is a sovereignty issue. It's jurisdictional,
Right,
right?
right,
So I think making it international, having an international court is a bit difficult because it's a jurisdictional issue.
right.
So how can you? It's unlike genocide. It's an international human right criminal act, right?
Yes,
So therefore, you can have an international court. But in taxation, I think it's very difficult to have an international tax court because each country have their own law.
right.
It's jurisdictional. It's a matter of sovereignty, and this is one of the things that every country is very zealous about.
I
It's a
guess
turf
if
war.
we have, if we, yeah, you're right in the sense that if we don't have an international agreement where everybody must abide by the same rule, then yes, that poses a practical problem because each country will have to enact its own law, its own tax law, with respect to this digital economy, and implementing that, collecting those taxes may be very difficult because, yeah, I mean, the international court will have no legs. You know, yeah, I guess you're right. Now let's switch back because we're almost at the end. let's switch back a little bit. I wanted to have your own perspective as a former tax official in the Philippines, in one of the greatest countries in that region. What do you think about the last decision by the UK regulator to request the Big Four to change the way they do business?
The way they what?
You know, the Financial Reporting Council, you know, in the UK,
Yeah.
asked, you know, a couple of days ago that the Big Four, the big accounting firms, had asked them to had proposed the operational separation of audit unit, you know, within this PYC, Deloitte, KPMG, and Ernst & Young. Do you think that proposal goes far enough? Because as you know, all these Big Four corporations and others, all these big accounting firms, have been implicated again and again and again and again in every single multinational fraud scandal for the last 10 or 15 years, right? No, actually 20 years since the war come, right? That brought down Anderson, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so increasingly, the civil society has been complaining about the way these same accounting firms and their lobbyists, their lawyers, their, you know, everybody that works for them are manipulating regulators all over the world. I tend to think that they actually are they are destroying capitalism. You know, but that this will be the subject of a different debate. You know, I think that this accounting firm, the way they operate, it's very bad for the world economy. Now, your comment, what I wanted to get from you is, you as a former tax official, executive of the Philippines, you have dealt with these companies before, because I'm sure they have subsidiaries in the Philippines. So this, the FRC, the FRC, I'm sorry, has proposed an operational separation of audit unit. You know, because you know they have advisory unit and audit unit. They have all kind of unit. Now they also want to practice law. You know, all these are, I mean, are impacting the quality of their audit, because a lot of times, in practical terms, the same company wants to do auditing, hold the books, accounting, do advisory services where they make a lot of money, and for the same client. You know?
Okay. Yeah. Actually, in the Philippines, they're already segregated.
Okay.
So if you're an auditing firm, you cannot do management advisory.
Okay.
And you cannot be a law firm. I mean, a lawyer acting as a legal advisor,
Right.
and representing your client in the court. You cannot do that. So in the Philippines, we have already done that. We followed the Americans when the last scandal happened, Ernst and Young.
Mm-hmm.
No, Anderson.
Anderson.
Yeah. When the United States said you cannot have advisory, you are just purely audit. So in the Philippines, it's already only purely audit. You cannot, the auditing firm does not have any advisory function in it. They have to spin it off.
Perfect, perfect. Well, Kim, we are at the end of our conversation.
I thought you were going to ask me what am I going to do if I run a country?
Yeah. If you want to elaborate on that, hey, I'll be happy. I'll be happy. Listen, yeah. So let's talk about it. You are appointed. This is a new country. Philippines just got independence yesterday. Today, the new president, the new elected president, appoints you and say, Kim, I'm giving you the responsibility of designing a tax structure for the country, what would you do?
Okay. First, what I would do is I would simplify my tax system. Okay.
Okay.
First thing, we have so many exemptions in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
In the VAT, we have 30 plus. I think what I will do is I will survey all the exemption in the ASEAN country and just maintain at parity. So if I think most ASEAN country at maximum have 15 exemption. So we should just have that 15 exemption. Then second, remove some of the other taxation, documentary stamp tax, to make it simpler. Remove some of the exemptions given to large corporations and just have a single tax and make it a bit lower so that everyone will be paying the same tax.
The same tax, right.
Yeah, because and then computerize the whole thing.
Okay.
Will require everyone to do electronic invoicing, and when they do that, it will all go to the Bureau of Internal Revenue. And the other thing I will do is abrogate all double taxation treaty.
Perfect. I mean, you get you and I could work together. That's my main.
And then lift bank secrecy law for taxation. So,
perfect. So what about you having the publication of, like they do in certain countries, publication of how much taxes are taken from each individual? Have it published on the list, made it public. How much is everybody in the country paying for taxes?
Actually, there's a provision in our tax code for that, but we have not been able to implement it because we have 2 million taxpayers.
Right.
So during my term, what we did is we published the top 500 individual taxpayer and the top 500 corporate taxpayer.
Taxpayers, okay.
But now they discontinued doing that. So, but during my time, that's what we do.
Okay.
We publish those. But the law itself said that we should publish everyone. But it's just that we don't have the resources. But with all this computerization, eventually it's possible.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, Kim, it was a wonderful conversation that I had with you.
Okay.
Enlightening. I was able to learn some of the things that I did not know about Philippine taxation. Okay. And I hope that your colleagues are going to be able to grant me the same access as you, so we can have a different perspective. There are things that you may not say during the meeting because the time allocated or, the forum is not open for that. But hey, this is a platform that I created specifically for, to have you guys, the expert in big organization, express yourself, frustrations, hopes, and, dream a little bit.
Well, I'm happy and honored to be invited in your podcast.
Thank you.
Anyway, if you want to discuss other things, you can always invite me again.
I will do that. I will do that. The door will stay open for you as well. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You have a great evening in the Philippines.
Okay. Have a great day.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye now.